Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I like short intros. Usually my intro ends with something about me wanting to have like a cat ranch at some point in my life. So it is true. It is fact. Okay. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. First of all, jazakumullah khairan for having me here again. I do not live in Staten Island, but Staten Island is one of the places that's near and dear to my heart, to the point that we call the MAS Center of New Jersey the sister center of the MAS Staten Island Center. It is a, mashallah, blessed gathering with a lot of youth, and it's a place that every center should aspire to be like. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you guys for really giving this place its youthful spirit and really making it what it is. So tonight, as Abdurrahman said, we'll be talking about Sayyidina Yusuf, inshallah. So who passed the surah already in your readings? Did anybody read in Quran? You guys passed it? No? Okay, so inshallah you passed it here when you were in Taraweeh. And for a lot of people, Surah Yusuf is one of those, you know, nice surah. It's a pretty surah. It's a story, right? It's a story from beginning to end. And then we pass by it and it's a feel-good surah. You know, it starts with like hardship in the beginning and there are a few occurrences in the middle. And then by the end, you know, great things happen and the family is united. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. And then we move on, right? But first of all, before we actually delve into the surah or the Prophet himself, we need to understand a few things about the surah itself. Number one, Surah Yusuf is unique in the sense that it was revealed as a whole surah. So Surah Yusuf has how many ayat? About 111 ayat, so over 100 ayat. So most surah, with the big surah specifically, were revealed in portions, a few verses at a time, depending on the reasons for the revelation of these verses. Surah Yusuf was one of the surah, or perhaps, I'm not going to say the only surah because I'm not sure, but one of the only surah at the very least that was released one shot, okay? For two reasons. Number one, does anybody know when Surah Yusuf was revealed? Okay, so Surah Yusuf was revealed after Am al-Huzn, the year of sorrow. And what happened during the year of sorrow? Two people beloved to the Prophet ﷺ passed away. One was his wife Khadija, and the other one was his father figure, his uncle Abu Talib. So after that trying year, after trying events, and after the Muslims were boycotted for a very long time, and they went through this, you know, starvation and famine and being boycotted and being surrounded and being cut off from everything that they knew and everything that they loved in every way that they could have sustenance, then, you know, this whole qati'ah, this whole boycott ended, and then two people beloved to the Prophet ﷺ died. So one reason that the surah was revealed is because it is a surah of hope. It does give hope. If you've read the surah, it does start with, like I said, hardship, and then it goes through these trials, but then it ends with, you know, this beautiful ending, right? But the second reason why the surah was revealed is because the non-Muslims, the Jews and the Christians of Medina, especially of the Jews of Medina and the Christians of Mecca, specifically the Jews, challenged the Prophet ﷺ. And they said, you know, if you really are the Prophet, prove it. Tell us about, you know, prophets from before that you don't know about or the people don't know about. So this surah was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ one shot, so that when he was asked about it, he could tell the story of this prophet one shot. If it were revealed in verses like other surah were, then he would have to go to these people and say, okay, I know about Yusuf. Okay, what do you know about Yusuf? Okay, well, you know, he was born to Yaqub. Okay, what else? So if it were revealed in pieces, right, then there would be doubt that he was going and asking people and finding out bits and pieces from whatever allies he had from outside of the Muslims, or, you know, people who were not Muslim before who became Muslim and so forth. But the revelation of the surah itself coming down one shot enabled him to prove his prophethood by talking about a prophet that not many people knew about. So it wasn't, for example, Abraham. It wasn't, you know, Sayyidina Ibrahim or Musa or the prophets that are well known, but it was about Yusuf, who is a lesser known prophet at the time. And even if you look at the Quran, Sayyidina Ibrahim is mentioned a lot, and Sayyidina Musa is mentioned the most out of all the prophets, correct? But Sayyidina Yusuf is mentioned in one surah and one surah only. So this is how the Prophet ﷺ helped prove his prophethood. But what's so beautiful about Surah Yusuf is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls it أحسن القصص, the best of stories, right? He tells the Prophet ﷺ, نحن نقص عليك أحسن القصص بما أوحينا إليك هذا القرآن. That this is the best of stories. Why is this the best of stories, right? So that's what's important. But before we move on to that, let's talk about Yusuf himself. So there's a big difference. Does anybody mind if I like roam around a little bit? Okay, I don't know how to sit still. Sorry. Okay, so let's move this a little bit. Let's move this a little bit. Okay, there we go. So the surah, we have to distinguish between the surah, Surah Yusuf itself, and the Prophet Yusuf himself. And there is a reason for that. The surah itself, even though it's about this one prophet, it's about the story of this one prophet, it has so many concepts. And when you look at Surah Yusuf, you can find different angles that can address different aspects of life. So the surah you could talk about for hours and hours and months. And, you know, in doing my research about the surah, you know, I was told that a scholar friend of ours actually did his PhD dissertation on this surah. So you can imagine how deep this surah goes. And there's so many other things in Islam that you could do a PhD dissertation on. But it was this surah that this brother chose because it is such a deep and profound surah. But now you go into the person of Yusuf himself. So who was Yusuf? Well, to begin with, he was a child. Yusuf was a child, right? And in our terms now, if Yusuf lived in this day and age, Yusuf would be the poster child for victim. He would literally be the example that we give for a victim, right? Victimized on so many levels. So number one, he was a child. Number one, he was a child, right? So when he was, well, we'll get to that, inshallah. So number one, he was a child. And number two, he was abandoned by his siblings, right? Not only abandoned, but what happened to Yusuf? Well, Yusuf was the son of a prophet, Yaqub, from a lineage of prophets. He was a good-looking kid, grew up into a good-looking man. We all know this aspect. Sisters still blush when we talk about Sayyidina Yusuf. All the sisters here are smiling. You guys can't see it. Wallahi, I've had so many sisters be like, you know, I just want to be like, you know, on the day of Hashr, I just want to be next to the... Listen, I can't help where I'm next to on the day of Hashr, can I? I don't choose that. But beyond that, you know, but that very thing, that very point is actually going to be what is his quote-unquote downfall. That he was the child of a prophet, that he was a good-looking person, and that he was given knowledge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to see things beyond what normal people see, right? So he was getting all this attention from his father. And then his brothers get jealous, like siblings do. Siblings get jealous because sometimes parents have preferences, even if they don't mean it, right? But in this case, Yaqub was being protective of his son. Not preferential, but protective. So his brothers, what do they say? They say, you know, our father is very protective and preferential of Yusuf and his brother, so you know what? Let's kill him. Can you imagine, like, anybody who has siblings, so especially if you're the middle child. Who's the middle child here? So if you're the middle child, hopefully you guys don't deal with this, but you know, middle children know this, right? Like a lot of times, like you feel like you're like the, you know, ignored child or whatever, but you know, you never think, oh, I'm gonna kill my older brother, my older sister, or I'm gonna kill the baby. The baby is like getting all the attention. No matter how old the baby gets, they get all the attention. You never think, I'm gonna kill the baby, or I'm gonna kill my sibling, right? And it never is, I mean, unless it's like, you know, a psychotic situation, like an abnormal situation where, you know, a group of siblings decide, this one kid, we're gonna kill him. Can you imagine if all your siblings are like, we're killing you? Like, this one kid, we're gonna kill him. And you know what? After that, we're gonna be good. Can you imagine actually intending to make that sin? We're gonna like kill this kid, and then when we're done, we plan on being good. So that's what happens. One of them, wise enough, says, don't kill him, just throw him in a well and somebody will pick him up. Imagine this day and age saying, you know, like, I'm gonna go leave my sibling, or I'm gonna go leave my kid or somebody in like the woods or at a gas station or whatever, and whatever happens, happens. That's literally what they said. Let's go throw him in a well, somebody will pick him up, and you know, then our dad's gonna love us and everything will be great, woo. So they did that. They went to their dad and they say, let us take him, let us go take him to play. We'll take care of him. We promise we'll take care of him, right? And he says, again, being a prophet himself, also having this wisdom and this ability to see things, read into things beyond just what we see in front of us, right? The immediate reality. He says, I'm afraid that you're going to take him and the wolf is going to eat him. And they say, you know what? If the wolf is going to eat him and all of us are with him, well, then we're a bunch of losers. Literally, they say that. And then they come back, they go, they throw him in the well. They come back and they say, the wolf ate him. We left him, we were hunting, and the wolf ate him. And they get some like fake blood from when they were hunting, dip the shirt in blood, and they say this is his shirt. And again, being the man that he was and the knowledge that he knew, he said, you guys planned something. You guys planned something, right? So number one, going back to Yusuf, he was a child. Why am I saying this? Why do we know he was a child? Because when he was dropped in that well, then there was a caravan that passed by. They sent somebody to go and pull water out of the well, and instead he pulls out a kid. Like a rabbit out of the hat. Pulls the kid out of the well. And then he says, هذا غلام. There's a kid here, right? So we know that he was a child. And so his siblings conspire against him. They throw him into the well. Then these people take him, they sell him for next to nothing, right? He gets sold from the region where he was living, which is the region of Palestine. He gets shipped to Egypt, right? Different culture, different people, different everything pretty much, right? It's not like the world is now where, you have the intermarriage of civilizations and you see things online and you know what's going on and you travel and it's fine because some people speak English and they could have not even have spoken the same language, and that was likely the case. So this boy, subhanAllah, pushed out of Palestine, grabbed and dragged into Egypt, and he's there and he knows nothing around him. He's a helpless boy. Alhamdulillah, there's, Allah is always with him and has mercy, and he sends him to people who help raise him, right? And everything is good. Until he reaches the age where he now has wisdom, and then he's sexually harassed by the person who raised him. And not only that, there's a whole bunch of women who are so amazed by his beauty that they start like cutting their hands with knives by mistake because they're like so mesmerized, right? And then on top of that, they want to seduce him. And he's like, Allah, like, help me, because what am I going to do with these people? And so what was the result of that? He was jailed. For his own protection, right? He was jailed. So let's see, a kid torn away from his family, betrayed by his siblings, thrown into a well. So let's add physical abuse to that, right? Taken, sold into, let's say not slavery, but a forced adoption, okay? Dragged to a country he didn't know, raised by somebody and then assaulted by them, and then harassed by a whole community of women, and then thrown in jail, okay? So this is who Yusuf is. And all this is because it started with the fact that his father was protective of him. Why is that? Because he went to his father, right? And he said, I see myself, right? He says, I see myself and planets and the sun and the moon making sajda to me. Okay, prostrating to me. So you guys know when you make sajda. And back then, again, before the time of the Prophet, ﷺ, before the time of salah, it was a sign of respect, not a sign of worship. So I see these planets and the sun and the moon making sajda to me. So his dad, being a prophet, knew right away, this boy is special. And that's why he knew when his sons came back to him and they said, the wolf ate him. He said, no, you did something to him, right? Because he already knew there was something behind it. Now, it may seem at this point then, because this boy is knowledgeable, because his father realized early on that he has this gift of prophethood and that he's this good-looking kid, it might seem like all these things are what? That they're a test rather than a blessing. Like if this kid were born in a normal family to a normal father who didn't recognize this blessing, or the kid had like average looks or a little bit, slightly better than average looks, he would have been home with his family, with his siblings, with his mom, just living his life, right? But these things are supposed to be a blessing. Good looks are a blessing, right? It's a rizq. So when a person is born, right, They are born with a certain amount of blessings, rizq that was written to them. What their life is going to be like, who they're going to be around, what possessions they're going to have, what money they're going to have, and their looks, their health, their wealth, all of that is part of their rizq. So can you imagine your own rizq, your own bounty, your own blessings that Allah wrote for you be your downfall? But how is that your fault? That's not your fault. It was something that was deemed for you. Allah determined it for you. Now we know who Yusuf is as a person. So what happens? Yusuf goes into prison. And what happens to Yusuf? He sees these two people and they start telling him, one of them says, I dream that, I'm making wine, and the other one says, I dreamt that I have a plate of bread on top of my head and the birds are eating from it. And then they say, can you tell us what this means? You seem like a good person, right? And so he explains it to them. He says, one of you is going to go to his master. Again, wine is a sign of like richness, right? Like somebody's rich, wealthy. So you're going to go to your master. You're going to get out of here and you're going to go to your master. And the other one, he says, you're going to be crucified and the birds are going to be eating from your head. And this is what that means. And then he told the guy who was leaving, he said, listen, remember me when you go, because he realized that he would be going to a powerful master. Again, this whole concept of like asr al-khamr is like, it's a sign of wealth. So he says, when you go to this powerful, rich person, remember me. And shaitan made him forget him. So he stayed in jail for a few more years until who had a dream? Who? The king had a dream. Thank you. The king himself had a dream. So you see this escalating, right? First, Yusuf himself has the dreams, and then the people in jail have the dreams, and then the king has the dream. So every dream he has is pushing him from state to state, right? It's pushing him further, a little bit further, a little bit further. And the king says, I see 7 fat cows eating 7 thin ones, and 7 grains and 7 green grains and 7 dry grains. What does this mean? And the people around him are like, these are dreams. We don't know how to interpret dreams. So then the person who was with him, who he told him, you will go to a rich, powerful master and you'll be like, you'll be making the wine. It turns out this person ended up working for the king. So he says, wait. I remember there's somebody who could do this. There's somebody who could tell us what this means. Send me to him and I'll find out. And he goes to him and he asks him, what does this mean? And he says, listen, you're going to spend 7 years, and these 7 years are going to be rough, and then 7 years are going to be 7 years are going to be good planting. So save whatever you plant, and then 7 years are going to be rough. So you're going to use whatever you saved from before, and then on the year after that, so the 15th year, everything is going to be good again, and people are going to be in a good status. Like they're going to be good. Like everything is going to be good again. Everything is going to go back to normal. So then he goes back and he tells the king. The king says, "Bring him to me." So he goes back to me. He says, "The king wants to see you." What does he say? What would anybody say after spending that much time in jail? You're falsely imprisoned. All these things happen to you. So trauma is your life at this point, right? What do you say? Something comes to get you out of jail. You know what? This is your get out of jail free card. What do you say? What would you guys say? Seriously. Would you say, "No, I'm good. I just need a nap"? You're going to get out of there as fast as you can, right? What did he tell? What did he tell the messenger? He said, "Go back to the king and ask him what's up with these women who cut their hands." So he asked the women, "You guys cut your hand. What's up?" They're like, "Nope, we know he didn't do anything wrong." The wife, the woman who raised him, right? Imra'atul Aziz. Al-Aziz was the person who was like in charge of everything. His wife was the one who had harassed him initially. And she said, "You know what? Now it's time to tell the truth. He didn't do anything wrong. He was right and I was wrong. He was telling the truth and I was lying. And now it's time for me to tell the truth." So after that, what happened was they asked the woman. The woman says, the wife of the Aziz says, He didn't do anything. And I'm not saying that I was right, but I have to tell the truth at this point. It's time for me to tell the truth, right? So then the king says, you know what, bring him back to me. I wanted to hide. I want him to be on my side. So he says at this point, again, at this point, what happens is, put yourself in his position. I want you guys to put yourself in his position for a second. And you, all this happened to you. You're in jail. This king, the leader, comes and says, you know what, time to get out of jail. What do you guys say? You guys stay quiet because you're so thankful. What do you say? You say thank you, right? Or I appreciate it, or oh my God, this is wonderful news. Or you know what he said? He said, make me in charge of all the stores of the land. Put me in charge of the stores of the land. Right? He says, I'm up to it. I have the skill for it. I can do it, right? And so he becomes in charge. Now, at some point after that, just so you guys see how this goes around full circle. Remember in the beginning we said the person who raised him or who bought him was Al-Aziz, right? That was his title, Al-Aziz. And at some point, towards the middle or the end of the surah, they end up addressing him as Al-Aziz. So the place that he started as this refugee was the place where he ended up as the leader, the person who is in charge of all the lands. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا لِيُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ يَتَبَوَّأُ مِنْهَا حَيْثُ يَشَاءُ. We gave Yusuf, we really solidified him in this ard, in this ground, on earth, and we gave him whatever position he asked for. He asked for the position. It was granted to him. And then there's a part of the story where, his brothers come, but they don't know that it's him, and he knows it's them. He gives them their stuff, puts their money back in their bag. He says, bring me your brother, their younger brother, who, again, remember in the beginning, the siblings say him and his brother are their dad's favorite. So he's, at this point, he's worried about his brothers. Brother's probably grown. He says, bring me your brother from your dad. Again, they don't know who he is, but he's aware of who they are. They go, they bring him. He has this whole thing where he plants the king's goblet in his brother's bag, right? And accuses of him stealing so he can keep him next to him. They go, they come back. There's this whole thing about, and then it comes around to, they find out he's Yusuf and he forgives them, brings his dad, and he tells his dad at the end, this is what we talked about many, many, many years ago, okay? Now, again, so far, it's a wonderful, feel-good story. It's a beautiful story. Wallahi, it is. If you guys have not read it in depth, read it. Go back to the story and read it, and read the translation. Or if you have the clear Quran, read it. Or listen to the many commentaries on this surah. It's a beautiful story. But how is this story relevant to the Prophet ﷺ at his time? And more importantly, how is it relevant to us now? Did any of us get tossed down a well? Or, left in the woods, or, taken from one country to another as forced refugees. Anybody ever experienced that here? So how does that relate to us? Why should we pay attention to a surah beyond the fact that it's just a beautiful surah? A couple of things. Every surah in the Quran, especially if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deemed it ahsanul qasas, the best of stories. When Allah says something is the best of something, then you need to sit up and pay attention to that story. You need to try to find out what Allah is saying. And Allah says many times in the Quran that He has many signs around us in the Quran and outside the Quran for who? لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ, right? The people who what? The people who think, the people who reflect. So the importance of this is that we look at Yusuf as a person, first and foremost, right? And we try to think, okay, if somebody's been through all of that, and again, that's a lot for one person to go through, especially if they're a kid, then what makes Yusuf this big figure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed his story to the Prophet ﷺ after the hardest year of his life? Because there are four actually important lessons from this surah. Number one, the concept of ihsan. And I'm sure you guys have heard this said over the past few nights, The concept of ihsan, and you guys will keep on hearing this, the concept of ihsan is central to us as Muslims. And what is ihsan? Does anybody know what ihsan is? Excellence, right? So in some translations, it's to do good. But it's not just to do good. It's to dwell in excellence. And what does that mean? Does that mean that you have to be perfect to be excellent? You do not have to be perfect to be excellent, but you do have to try your best to seek excellence. It doesn't mean that you're going to be excellent at the end or that you're going to be perfect. There is no perfect person on the face of the earth. But the fact that you're striving to do good and be better and do it in the best possible way that you can, in spite of all that challenges you and everything that stands in your way and all the bad mouthing that you hear and all the Islamophobia that we have right now and all of the discrimination that we hear about and the frustration that we have in dealing with situations, especially now in light of what's going on in Gaza, that you keep what you're doing in spite of the fact that there's so many roadblocks in your way. And the only way that you can reach ihsan is by having patience and taqwa. Sabr and taqwa. And by the way, the concept of ihsan was mentioned 7 times in Surah Yusuf. 7 different times. Whether it's calling Yusuf from among the muhsineen. So twice Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala names him from among the muhsineen. Twice people say that they see that he is from among the muhsineen. Twice Allah talks about the concept of ihsan, and once Yusuf refers to ihsan, or he refers to himself within the concept of ihsan. He doesn't call himself a muhsin, but he refers himself within the concept of ihsan. But in that particular ayah, he says, إِنَّهُ مَن يَتَّقِ وَيَصْبِرْ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. The person, the one who is God conscious and is patient, Allah does not waste the reward of those who strive for excellence. So you don't have to be excellent to get the reward, but you have to strive for it. And the only way you could strive for excellence is through patience and through fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second concept is tawakkul. And again, I'm sure you guys have heard about the concept of tawakkul these past nights. Because one thing that unifies all of our prophets is that they have a blind reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But they don't have a blind reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they're naive. They have a blind reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they've worked on ihsan. They've worked on sabr. They've worked on taqwa. You cannot rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without any human conditions, without putting any conditions or doubts there, unless you've worked on this concept of excellence, unless you've worked on your patience, unless you've worked on being fearing and always aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You cannot rely on something that you don't trust, and you cannot rely on someone that you don't trust. If you don't trust somebody, if you don't trust a friend, if you don't trust a partner, if you don't trust a spouse, you cannot rely on them, right? As humans, can you rely on somebody who's betrayed you? Can you rely on somebody who's hurt you? Can you rely on somebody who makes promises and comes back from their promises? You can't do that. So it's human nature to have doubt. Even though you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the all-powerful, the all-seeing, the all-merciful, the one who can do anything. But as humans, subhanAllah, we still have doubt. And that's because we have not worked on this attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have not worked on the taqwa, on the fear, on the consciousness, the awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have not worked on the ihsan, striving to be the best that we can, to do the best that we can. We have not worked on patience. Patience is one of the biggest lacking concepts in this ummah. It's one of the biggest characteristics that are lacking in this ummah in this day. Patience. Patience with Allah's qadr. Knowing that the promises that He made us are coming to fruition. But it's not on our timeline. And that's what Yusuf alayhi salam knew. He knew that the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was there and that it would happen. But it wouldn't happen on his timeline. It would happen on the timeline that Allah decreed for him, because that is the best timeline for him. So can you imagine making dua, Ya Allah, save me from these people? And the answer is to put him in jail. And can you imagine that he runs into this person and it's, good luck, or, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put this person his way. And he knew this person was going to go to a powerful person. And he says, remember me. Get me out of here. And then this person forgets and he's just sitting patiently in jail for years. Bid'a sinin. Bid'a means more than 2. Can anybody here tolerate being in jail, let alone being jailed falsely? People couldn't tolerate being isolated during COVID. They went stir crazy. People didn't want to wear masks because it was prohibitive. Can you imagine being in jail knowing that you did nothing wrong? And then almost finding your way out, almost getting out. But because a person simply forgot, you're stuck in jail for a few more years. He could have been like, you know what? Allah gave up on me. You know what? Maybe I read this wrong. You know what? Let me try to barter my way out. But he didn't. He sat patiently in jail because he knew that wa'adullahi haqq. The promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is true. The third concept is persistence. So you have, what was the first one? Yo, these people need coffee. You people, do they not give you guys like caffeine here? I see it in like the reels and stuff. There's no coffee here? They need caffeine, man. Oh. So the first one was what? Ihsan, right? And the second one was what? Tawakkul. But the third one is persistence, not patience, persistence. So the first 2, right, are passive qualities. They're passive qualities, right? In the sense that you have to work on them, and you can work on them while you're sitting like this. I can sit like this and learn to be patient. And I can get bored and annoyed and, but I can kind of control myself and learn patience. And the Prophet ﷺ says you learn patience by being patient, right? And you learn to not get angry by not getting angry. Literally, that's the hadith. You learn to not get angry by not getting angry. And you learn patience by being patient, right? But are these active qualities? These are passive qualities. They're excellent qualities, but they're passive qualities, right? But then you have persistence. And what is persistence? Persistence means that you accept your fate, but you don't give up. You accept that what's going on now is going on now for a reason decreed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you don't give up. Yusuf alayhi salam never took his fate lying down. He never took his fate and said, okay, it is what it is. When the wife of Al-Aziz made her advances on him, he didn't say, well, she's in a position of power and she's the wife of Al-Aziz and this man is all powerful and nobody's going to believe me, so I might as well just give in. He didn't do that. He didn't stand in front of, a bunch of, and again, if she's the wife of a nobleman, what are her friends going to be like? They're probably going to be noble women, right? They're going to be wife of powerful men. And again, in front of these women, he wasn't like, oh my God, now I'm really in trouble because, I was dealing with one strong, powerful person and now I'm dealing with the wives of all these powerful people. You know what? Let me just give them what they want and call it a day. Let me just get done with it, right? No. He didn't do it. And then he tried to get out of jail, right? So he knew he was in jail. He knew why he was there. He knew that it was to save him, but he still tried to get out of jail by telling this one person, mention me. But then he didn't get out of jail. And then after he explained the dream of the king, the messenger comes to him and he's like, okay, well, the king wants you. So what does he do? Again, he doesn't say, okay, let's go. No. He has the persistence to clear his name because he knows what he wants to do next. And with a bad reputation or with an even slightly doubtful reputation, he won't be able to do what he set out to do. So he says, and go ask them what they did. So pretty much it's clear my name. First clear my name and then I'll come. Once his name is cleared, again, he didn't sit down and say, okay, good, I'm great, I'm out of prison, let me go, be a passive prophet sitting on the side, worshiping, telling people, calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which by the way he did in jail and in so many places. He called to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what did he do? He asked for a higher rank. He went after what he wanted. He did not let the challenges that face him hold him back. He went after what he wanted. And then, like we said, he went around full circle and he became Al-Aziz. He earned the title of Al-Aziz. So what was the first one again? Brother Sharif, you really need some caffeine here. Do we have a gift for her? I need a gift for her. Rahma, can we get her something? Can we? Nice. So it was ihsan, tawakkul, reliance on Allah. The third one was persistence, right? Now, there's one more. And this one might be a controversial one, guys, but hear me out. The fourth one is al-afu, forgiveness. But the concept of forgiveness is not to just let things go. It's not to, turn the other cheek. It's not to say, you oppressed me, so now we're good. It's to have the ability to be in a position of power, to be in a position to gain revenge, to be in a position to get back at somebody. You're now higher than them. And then to forgive them instead. That's what al-afu is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says at the end of the surah, actually went over that. Sorry about that. Actually, let me go back a second. So I learned something really interesting recently. Who's watching the Omar Suleiman series, the Why Me series? Oh, you guys really need to watch that series. It's a really good series. So I'll actually pinpoint the episode because I was watching it and I this realization hit me. In episode number 14, he's talking about a verse that was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ tells Jibreel, what's the meaning of this verse? And so he says, I don't know until I ask my Lord. So he goes, he asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he comes back and he says, a series of things. You guys can go watch the episode, inshallah, because I don't want to quote something from Jibreel incorrectly. But what was interesting about it was, after the Prophet ﷺ died, and Ali ibn Abi Talib got the Prophet ﷺ's sword. On that sword, he found something engraved. And it says, أعفو عن من ظلمك وصل من قطعك وأحسن إلى من أساء إليك وقل الحق ولو على نفسك. And those are the words, more or less, that Jibreel said to the Prophet ﷺ, which means forgive the person who oppressed you and connect with that who's cut you off and be good to somebody who is bad to you and tell the truth even if it's going to hurt you, even if you're saying something about yourself. Why is this relevant? What was the reality that hit me in that moment? That subhanAllah, all of these, even though the verse that Umar Sulaiman was referring to was not in Surah Yusuf, but these four things are the life of Sayyidina Yusuf. These are the four things that make him a muhsin. These are the four things that make him a muttaqi. These are the four things that make him a sabir, right? That when he got to the point where he was this powerful person, his brothers were in front of him. And by the way, by the time they got to him, they were poor. They were in a bad situation. They needed help from him. Even after, their brother had stolen, right? They still came back and they're like, we see you're from among the muhsinin, help us. We're bad. We're in a bad situation. Our father and our family are in a bad situation. Help us out. And he had the chance to say, go perish. You did this to yourselves. Or I have nothing to do with you. I don't even know you. But at that moment, he chose to say, do you know what you did to Yusuf and his brother? And they said to him, oh my God, you're Yusuf. And he said, yes, I'm Yusuf and this is my brother. So this whole time, the brother wasn't in jail. He had just taken care of him because he wanted to protect him. And at that moment, what does he say to them? What does he say to them? He doesn't say, you guys threw me down the well. You guys deserve what's happening to you. Bring me my father and you go away, perish with your families. I have nothing to do with you. I'm living my best life right now. That's not what he says. You know what he says to them? He says, go back and bring me my parents and bring me your family so that they can live in this like, you know, very pleasant, very like rich, very like well-to-do, well-off situation. So he had the chance when he was in a position of power to get back at the people who started his saga in the first place, who started this trauma in the first place, and he didn't do it. He didn't take it. And that was part of his ihsan. وَصِلْ مَنْ قَطَعَكَ. He decided to reconnect with the people who literally cut him off. And in this day and age, you know, cutting off people is like not texting them, blocking them, you know, whatever it is, ghosting them. No, they literally threw him down the well, and that's how they cut him off. And he decided to reconnect with them, right? أحسن إلى من أساء إليك. Whether it's the wife of Al-Aziz or the women who sent him to jail or the guy who forgot about him in jail, or again, his brothers who tossed him in the well. He decided to be good to them because we have no recollection or no mention of the fact that he got back at any of these people. And again, if you go down from being this immigrant kid and all of a sudden you're the president, I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff that you're going to want to do, and it's not going to be nice. Because chances are, if you were this immigrant kid, this oppressed kid, this nobody kid, this kid who doesn't come from any particular family, this kid who's like, you know, trying to do good, this goody two-shoes kid, chances are there are a lot of people along the way who have hurt you in one way or another. And if you're in a position of strength or power, at that point, you're going to want to do something to get them back. You're going to want your just dues. Because not a lot of people have that tawakkul that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will get their rights for them. And then وَقُلِ الْحَقُّ وَعَلَوْ عَلَى نَفْسِكَ. Always be truthful, even if it means that you're saying you're implicating yourself. Now, all of this is great. But of course, especially in these like last 10 nights, we have Gaza on our minds, right? Every night we're talking about Gaza, and every night we're making dua for the people of Gaza. So how does Yusuf relate to the people of Gaza? How do people, more importantly, how does Yusuf relate to us now looking at the people of Gaza? Because you have to know that the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has conditions. The victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has conditions. The victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not just when we say, Ya Allah, and we hope for the best. The victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not just fasting and thinking that we did everything, or putting a few bucks in IR's box and saying, yay, we donated to Gaza, or even going down to a protest once in a while. And that's all this, by the way, is commendable. I am not saying it's not commendable. It is commendable. But in these 10 nights, what are you doing to fulfill the conditions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put for you for victory? You look at Yusuf and you see how he could have been a victim, and he turned it around and he made it a victory by making sure that he was consistent with his ihsan, consistent in getting closer to Allah. Every time it got harder for him, he would get closer to Allah. Every time the walls would close in on him, literally, he would mention Allah more. And Allah persisted on calling him min al-muhsinin in the surah, from among the people who strive for excellence. Working collectively is great, but working individually, working on yourself, is the most essential quality a Muslim can have to achieve victory. Because let me tell you, with us or without us, the victory of Allah is coming. With us or without us, Gaza will be free. And with us or without us, Palestine will be free. And it either sits in our scale or it does not sit in our scale. And you can be persistent in doing the actions that you're doing. And you should be persistent in doing the actions that you're doing. And you should follow up. And you should go to the protest. And you should lose your voice. And you should spend your money. And you should talk up on social media. And you should, and you should, and you should. And you should fear nobody but Allah. But what are you doing for you? Have we forgotten the basic concept of إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ? What are you doing? What am I doing to change what's inside me? Have I really put myself in the state of delusion so much that I think that going to a protest is going to magically change what's going on there? The people who are making the change, by the way, the people who are affecting the change, the people who are causing the change, this whole shift, are the people who have been working on changing themselves. The people who know that no matter how hard it gets, that they can turn to Allah at the end of the day. The people who know no matter how much their heart is broken, that they can put their heads on the prayer mats at night and say, Ya Allah, give me strength. Ya Allah, give me sincerity. Ya Allah, give me patience. Ya Allah, help me. Ya Allah, make me from among the muhsineen. Ya Allah, make me from those who are patient to really carry this through. And it's not just these things. And I'm sure, again, you've heard the concepts of ihsan and sabr and tawakkul. How many times have you guys heard them in these few nights? What has it been? 6 nights so far? How many times have you heard these 3 concepts said over and over again when you mention why prophets were successful and why they're victorious versus victims? But there are other things in the lessons of Sayyidina Yusuf that are essential, that are Allah's sunan in this land for victory. And among those are the things that we just mentioned. Forgiveness, al-afu, that you don't hold daghina, that you don't hold hate, that you don't hold revenge, that you don't hold negativity in your heart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-haqq, al-adl. Seek justice, seek righteousness. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, huwa al-muntaqim. He is the one who can seek revenge. We don't seek revenge. Because if we seek revenge, if our goal is revenge, if our goal is to just get back at people, no matter how oppressive they are, that's going to consume us. And Yusuf did not let that consume him. If you let negativity and hatred and darkness consume your heart, that's all you will see. And that will be your intention, and that's what you will achieve. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Your actions are by your intentions. And if your intention is, I'm just going there because I hate these people and I hate, what's going on. You can hate what's going on. But at the end of the day, we stand up for the people of Gaza because these are our brothers and sisters. We stand up for the people of Gaza because it is the basic Islamic concept of standing against oppressors. It is the whole concept of our deen to stand with what's right against what's wrong. That's why. We stand with the people of Gaza because we want Allah's reward and we fear His punishment if we're passive. Not because we hate, but because we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because we want to share in some of the reward because that victory is coming. That victory is coming. And it scares them so much to know that no matter what they do, no matter how much they pay, no matter how much they do propaganda or pay off, buy ads or buy politicians or buy people and get them to go to their protests, no matter how many millions or billions or, the money of Qarun they can put in. And they know that the victory of Allah is coming. They know that the victory of Allah is coming, and that scares them. Where are we in terms of all of this? Where are we? Where are you going to be when this victory comes? Are we going to be strong enough in changing ourselves? Are we going to be strong enough in knowing what the sunan of Allah are for victory, what His conditions for victory are, and trying to meet them as individuals? So that we can change our ummah, so that we can realize that victory. Are we going to do this? Or are we just going to pat ourselves on the back that I'm wearing a kufi and you're wearing a kufi and I'm wearing a Palestine bracelet and yay, good for me? That's not what it's about. Outward signs are wonderful. Because we live in a society where, alhamdulillah, we can still show these signs, unlike other societies where you would think you'd be able to. Muslim communities, Muslim societies where you cannot. So a show of solidarity is wonderful, and it shows our brothers and our sisters that we're with them. But that's not enough. And my dear brothers and sisters, I don't want you to delude yourself into thinking that's enough. It will never be enough. Learn the conditions to Allah's victory. Learn when Allah says, this is the best story for you to learn from. Ahsan al-qasas. Don't sit and say, what a pretty story. What a beautiful story. What an uplifting story. Yes, it is. But that's not the only thing that you take from there. When Allah tells you to sit up and pay attention, sit up and pay attention. And when Allah says in any verse, not just in this surah, these are the signs for people who think, stop and think. Be among the people who reflect. Be among the people who ponder. Be among the people who do tadabbur. Think, why is Allah saying this to me? Because if you don't stop at those verses, I hate to tell you, but you're not among the people that Allah was referring to. When in the Quran you read, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, and that doesn't relate to you, you're in trouble. You need to stop and think. When you don't recognize that Allah's talking to you as a mu'min, that's time for you to stop and think. And when Allah says these are signs for you to reflect, and you don't reflect, you need to really hold yourself accountable at that point. And when Allah says this is the best of stories, you need to stop and say, Ya Allah, why? Why was this the best of stories? Was it just to take away the grief of the Prophet ﷺ? It did that. And by the way, there is a benefit to Surah Yusuf, that if you read Surah Yusuf in a time of grief or in a time of need, and you read it consistently, you will get out of your grief. You will get out of your huzn. You will get out of your sorrowful situation. That's part of the reason why it was relieved. Are we a grieved nation right now? Are we not a grieved nation right now? Are we not a grieved ummah right now? Is the ummah of Muhammad not grieving? Because if you are not grieving, you are not of this ummah. And if you are grieving, why are you not reading this surah over and over and over again? If you are hurt by what's happening to our brothers and sisters, why are you not going back to this surah and reading it and saying, Ya Allah, give our brothers and sisters freedom like you freed Yusuf. Give them victory like you gave Yusuf victory. Help them become the highest in the land and help them regain power after now they're the weakest in their own land, like you gave Yusuf power. Why are we not doing this? Because we're still a long way from ihsan. We are a long way from taqwa. We are a long way from sabr. We are a long way from tawakkul. And I'm not saying this to help you guys feel sad or to make you guys feel hopeless. No, I'm telling you this because guess what? There's so many people, so many other people who could have been here tonight, or so many people who had something else to do tonight, or so many other people who left right before, or so many people who... There are people who aren't here for a reason, but guess what? You are here tonight. All of you, and all of you, Allah chose you to be here tonight so that you can witness the story of Sayyidina Yusuf, so that you can witness the benefits of Surah Yusuf, so you can learn from the character and the persistence of Sayyidina Yusuf, so that you can then go back and say, where am I? Where do I stand from the character of Sayyidina Yusuf and the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Where am I? So my brothers and sisters, in these last few nights of Ramadan, I urge you, I ask you to please reflect if you love your brothers and your sisters in Gaza, and not just in Gaza, by the way, anywhere where Muslims are being oppressed, anywhere where Muslims are suffering. If you love them like you say you do, and if you're as angry as you say you are, and if you're like as, riled up as your social media would show that you are, then please start with yourselves and evaluate yourselves and see where you are. Because that's the difference between you being a victim and being part of the victory. That is the difference between you perceiving yourself as one of the people who can't seem to win, are one of the people who know that the victory of Allah is coming. And the ummah of Muhammad is an ummah of victory. The ummah of our Prophet is an ummah of victory, and we'll stand one day in front of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam as his ahbab, as he referred to us, the people who came after him. He said, the people after me are my ahbab, the people beloved to him. We will stand in front of him, insha'Allah, as the people beloved to him and say, Ya Rasulullah, we learned from your signs. We learned from the stories that Allah sent to you. We learned from the prophets that came before you. We learned from what was revealed to you, and we made you proud. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who make our Prophet proud of us one day. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who witness the victory of the people of Palestine and the people of every single country where Muslims are being oppressed, whether it's a Muslim country or a non-Muslim country. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to always look in ourselves and be honest with ourselves and evaluate ourselves and push ourselves to highest ranks. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the victory, but Ya Allah, if we do not witness this victory, Ya Allah, give us the reward of at least having pushed a little of this victory forward. I leave you with this. It's not easy. Doing what you want to do is not easy. Trying to be all these things is not easy. And a lot of you, majority of you are going to walk out of here and say, yeah, nice talk. Good job, Sister Lana. And then a lot of people won't even think about it. This concept of ihsan and sabr and tawakkul, it all seems far, far away. Just like when I was younger, I used to look at my parents and say, one day when I'm older, I'll go to Hajj. One day when I'm older, I'll go to Umrah. One day when I'm older, I'll memorize the Quran and so forth. But you guys, you have to understand something. You guys are a different generation. You guys are the generation that went to Umrah at 14 years old. You guys are the generation that memorized at 12 years old. You guys are the generation that goes down and fights against all odds. And regardless, you know, my generation, the people older than me and are afraid of getting arrested, and you guys are like, hey, we're going to get arrested today. It's for a good reason. So don't think, if you can do all that, don't think that doing the things that we just talked about are hard. It just requires focus and time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to always make good use of our time. Jazakumullahu khairan. Okay. Can the ability to interpret dreams be acquired through knowledge, or is it exclusive to prophets like Yusuf alayhi salam? I do not know, and you guys have, mashallah, you have Sheikh Abdul Rahman here, so you can ask him if it can be acquired through knowledge. I think it can be, actually, I'm not even going to say. From what I know, the people who can interpret dreams are people who have been given this ability by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether you can acquire it by knowledge, I don't know. Obviously, having grown up between here and overseas, you know, you always have people who interpret dreams or books that say this means that and that means that. Or if you sleep after Fajr with wudu on and you dream, then it's a true dream. I'm not certain of these things because, again, my generation is different than your generation. I grew up in more of a cultural Islam, unfortunately, where as I grew up, I had to start parsing between what was factual in our deen and what people just thought growing up was true. So I can't answer this question for you, but I do know for a fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does give certain people the ability. So for example, Yusuf alayhi salam and Yaqub, his father alayhi salam, also had that ability, right? And there are, I can't think of the word, like people who are like wise people who can or have interpreted dreams. But I don't know for a fact if this was given to them as a gift or a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or if this was acquired by knowledge. So this is something you can ask Sheikh Abdul Rahman, inshallah. Guys, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows these. Were his brothers from both his mom and dad? I don't know. But I will tell you it is irrelevant to the story. Because if it had been relevant, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have mentioned it, or the Prophet would have mentioned it. Like, for example, the story of Sayyidina Ibrahim, right? You have two mothers, two sons, and that was relevant to the whole story that came after that. But in this case, I don't think it's relevant, and I don't think anybody really knows the answer to this. Why are they jealous if they're also the sons of a prophet? That's a good question. Because Yusuf alayhi salam, like I said from the beginning, and it's in the beginning of the surah, and I really hope that you guys go back and read it. He goes to his dad and he says, إني رأيت أحد عشر كوكبا والشمس والقمر رأيتهم لي ساجدين. So he says, I saw 11 planets and the sun and the moon prostrating to me, making sajda to me. So at that moment, his dad knew that he was special, right? So let me ask you, let me actually put it like this. If, I don't know, you guys look really young. Anybody parents here? Yeah, you guys are really young. Yeah, you're a parent. Okay, so usually when you have kids, you tend to look for this. Actually, as kids, you might know this. When you're kids, or when you're a parent and you have kids, you tend to look for the skills in your kids so you can grow them. And if you see that your child has a particular talent, you focus in on that talent. So I don't know how many of you guys over here, even the girls, play a particular sport and you went to play it in college and like you're really good at it, right? And usually the parent, when they see something like that, they want to grow it. They'll put a lot of money into it, you know, to put you into travel leagues and make sure they're at your games and try to raise the money. Same thing, you know, we have, mashallah, some youth in New Jersey who, you know, started off with like this like very simple robotics team, and they won local and then they won state, and now they're going on to nationals. So of course the parents are now trying to raise the money to make sure that they send their kids, because there is a talent there. Because they literally, I mean, I don't know if anybody's into robotics, but they literally just started and mashallah they won state. So you know there's some good, you know, talent there. So usually when you see a talent in your kid, you want to grow it, and inadvertently, unfortunately, sometimes you end up focusing on that kid more. So likely that's what happened. It's not that Yaqub loved his other sons less. It's that this one son had a talent that he recognized. It wasn't a talent, it was nubuwah. It was prophethood, right? So when he recognized prophethood in him, he realized that as a prophet, he had the responsibility to grow this nubuwah, to raise him, to teach him concepts like the concept of tawakkul, for example. And by the way, you'll see this if you go through the surah. Yaqub, all through the Quran, you could see it in parallel with Yusuf. He also had this incredible concept of tawakkul, this incredible reliance on Allah, because he knew that something good was going to happen at the end, no matter how hard it got. And the siblings just got jealous. Oh, come on. What is the major take-home lesson of the story of Yusuf? I'm going to give you guys the microphone to answer this. The major takeaway lesson of the story of Sayyidina Yusuf is that no matter how hard it gets, if you stick with Allah, that's the best way I could say it. If you stick with Allah and if you rely on Allah and keep Allah, if you're conscious of Allah, Allah will help you through it. And not just that, that Allah will raise your ranks, not just in this world or not just in the hereafter. We're always like, oh, Allah will raise your ranks in Jannah. Well, we're humans. And especially, you know, this day and age, instant gratification, right? We want it and we want it now. I want it, you know, I Uber Eats it. I want it, I Instacart it. I want it, I go look for it. It's at my fingertips, right? So that's the concept of, you know, that if you go through hardships, no matter how hard it is, if you stick with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you know that He has a timeline for you, then your ranks will be raised not only in Jannah, which is the goal, right? Victory is never the goal, but what's the goal? Jannah, right? The ultimate victory is what? Paradise. The ultimate victory is paradise. And that's beautiful, but paradise is not, it's not a concrete concept to us, right? It's not something I could touch. It's not something I can drink. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will raise your ranks in this world too. And the more that you are conscious of Allah, the more that you wait on His timeline, the more good you'll get out of it in this world and in the next.